Get started with who we got here. I see we have 4 or 5 users online, so that's good. So hi everyone, welcome to our first webinar. Hopefully this works out. We'll see how Skype does for this. We can maybe try something new in the future. I'm sure everyone's testing out a million different web apps these days with trying to get connected either remotely or however everyone's working, managing the current situation. So the webinar today is going to focus on how QIPCM gets their images in from external sites, what we do with those images, how they're anonymized at the remote site before sending, and then what we do with them once we get them internally in terms of image QC and logging them and notification to the sites that they're there. So QIPCM is a core lab we spun out of OICR funding, I guess about 7 or 8 years ago now, and our main goal is to work with clinical trials to support their imaging needs. So multi-site clinical trials, get all the images in, provide a central repository for remote investigators, and support their trials that way. So here we have our kind of guideline. So QIPCM is a program provided to support end-to-end medical imaging solutions for clinical trials. And we also have a very robust infrastructure for these kind of support systems. So it may not just be imaging support, it might be help and drafting protocols and imaging protocols and working with principal investigators on their grant applications and the like. So we have a pretty wide-ranging team. And even though cancer is in the name because it's spun out of the OICR grant, and most of about 95% of our trials are cancer related, we are open to doing any kind of DICOM imaging and storage. So we have a number of main areas that we look at in QIPCM. So we work with centralized DICOM storage and archival. So this is mostly what we're going to talk about today. So this is how do we get images in from remote investigators and support their multi-center trials? How do we anonymize them in a consistent way such that the imaging data or images are very easy to find afterwards? How do they sort them? And also make sure that when they're all brought into our packs from these remote sites, they're locked down such that only the investigator whose images they are can see those images. We also provide a set of tools so that remote investigators can come in and visualize their data, as well as doing QA on those images when they are received. We also have different procedures and tests. We have phantoms we can go out and scan at sites with and try to get, and we do quite a bit of work in phantom development, as well as we have a support and service team. So this is what I was talking about earlier, to support grant writing and that kind of thing, as well as also help just get your images analyzed properly, so we can support tool development as well as doing the analysis ourselves or supporting getting your applications onto our software. And we have very strict privacy and quality standards. We've been audited internally to try to make sure we meet all the different regulatory requirements for Health Canada as well as CFR 21 Part 11. So in terms of overall QIPCM, so this is just a quick outline of the QIPCM workflow. So on the left we have the CTP anonymizer, and the anonymizer allows us to anonymize images from remote sites. So the CTP is a tool developed by the RSNA, and we've taken that and customized it for each trial and even each site, such that the images that come through from a site will be anonymized in that specific way based on the trial protocol, and that they will be anonymized fully based on DICOM de-identification standards. Once those images come in, they undergo some image QC. So in the image QC, we're looking for a number of different factors, which we'll look at today. That could be anything from gross PHI that hasn't been stripped out to just a missing series or something along those lines that deviate from the trial protocol. We then store those in our packs, and then on the other side of that, we have the remote investigators who can log in and view their images remotely. And I'll show you a little bit about how we do that today, but that's mainly the focus of the next webinar if anyone's interested in it after today. So now we'll go through our QIPCM CTP demo. So this is kind of the main part I'd like to show everyone today. So how does this actually work? So this is actually my desktop PC, and I mean, just for obvious reasons with the whole COVID thing, I'm sitting on it working. So this is pretty similar to what would be happening with a technologist or study coordinator who's sending the images from the remote site. So they're not in UHN at all. I'm not in UHN right now. I'm just on my desktop PC. And this is the CTP application here. It's a little lightweight folder that's literally zipped and sent to the customers to or clients or sites to basically to anonymize their data. It's very straightforward. It's literally just a folder with one little shortcut in it. And by launching that, we open up our CTP transfer image. CTP transfer agent. So that's how we transfer the images, but let's have a look just to see where these images are. So if this is someone's workstation, they probably have their images in some kind of imaging software. It doesn't really matter what, any kind of DICOM software would work. So I'll just load it up. So let's say these are my images. So in this case, this is a phantom image set. If we open it up and have a quick look, it's nothing special. It's just a phantom data set with some, it's actually NEMA phantom data that we would use for doing QC at the sites before starting up a trial. And we can see here this image set is something, it's a MIP. So this is kind of a screen cap that's been stored, and it's also got some burn in on it. So that's the kind of thing we really wouldn't want to get in. And normally this would also be an MRN and a last name. So those are the kind of things when we're talking about anonymizing that we need to get out. So we can send this directly to our CTP agent. Sorry, someone have a question? Oh, okay. So we can send that to our CTP agent. And it's on my local computer, so it's a pretty fast transfer. So I'll minimize this. And so if we go into here, we'll see those images we just sent. And so from there, we can start our image transfer. The other way to do it, if we don't want to send that way, is you can also just locate the files locally, which in all honesty is how 95% of our people use it. They would just open up the files from a local share. So the difference here was, one was I was transferring it directly from an imaging software to CTP, or I'm just going into CTP and loading it up off either a DVD or some other location. So when we're ready to send these images, it's as easy as hitting start, and then it'll put in these parameters automatically. So in this case, I've just got a demo pipeline, but this is the information that's being encoded. It's encoding that it's site 1A from UHN, subject ID is set, and then all they need to enter is the numbers in this case. So we'll say 1, 2, 3, 4. As study description, we're going to call this phantom set. And click OK, and it'll start shipping these off. So you can see it's saying OK, 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 OK. So it's going through all these images. We don't really need to wait for these. I can start, although the one thing I would like to show you is what it does with this last one. So this image set here was that big 3D one that had the burn-in on it. And when we get to it, we'll notice it'll actually reject that one because it's not a kind of DICOM that it's accepting by default. So we can set those in the filtering constraints so that we try to catch images that have burn-in. So they don't even leave the site. So we see it's cut up, and it'll get to that one and say, look, it's rejected by the DICOM filter. So that one won't even be there when we go to do our QC in a minute. So selective images have been processed. Do you want to process more images? Yes. So if someone has another CD they need to go through, otherwise they can hit no. So we'll hit no, and then this is a bit of an important thing here that I don't think a lot of our technologists are actually looking at, but they have the ability to save an ID table. So what this ID table is a mapping at the end of the day, where did I move that? Sorry, of the MRN and what was actually it was mapped to. So for example, NEMA bladder MRN this became demo 0123, and that was the date. So it had, so basically that mapping is here and stored. Now, that may not be useful for sites. In fact, that might be something that the site wants to delete. So it's just something to be mindful of. So maybe someone wants to go back and see, oh, what did I anonymize that one on? And they can have a look. But other sites might consider that bad practice to have the PHI sitting on their desktop and maybe want to store this file somewhere else, on a network share or somewhere more secure. So just to be mindful of that as the technologist or coordinator. So now what do we do with these images in terms of QC? They've been sent off. The job of the coordinator is pretty much done. They'll be getting an email shortly, but it takes about 15 minutes. We'll come back to that. So from a QC perspective, what do we have to do at QIPCM with those images? So I'm actually going to show you how we log into the remote desktop, because it's the only way I can get to it since I'm working remotely. So this is the same way as your study investigator or any PI would log into QIPCM. So basically, this VMware Horizon client is our application that we use to do that. They type in the server, which we provide to them, as well as a manual when they first start up. They have to acknowledge that they're only using images that they're allowed to see. And they're, well, it's not, sorry, I should go back. It's not that they're only using images allowed to see, because they will only have access to images they are allowed to see. But it's mostly saying we're not going to take these emails or these images and email them to someone, or go to a Google Drive and try to store them there. Ways to get around trying to save the images on the infrastructure, because otherwise all images are locked in here. They can't save them to a local drive or anything like that. So in terms of their passcode, so every user that has a QIPCM user has a passcode. Just type mine in, and then we have two-factor authentication. So the next thing that's going to happen is we're going to get an email, and this email happens pretty much instantaneously. So it's already sitting here in my inbox. Just move over here so I can type it in. So 82066. And every time they log in, the user will get this passcode. And then at that point, they type in their username and password. So you can see it's quite a number of steps, and a lot of our remote investigators have a bit of difficulty the first time, so we often have to talk them through the first login. But once you get used to it, it's really not that cumbersome. So now I've logged into my virtual machine at work, which is how I'm spending most of my days now with working from home. So this is my virtual desktop, and it's no different than any of the virtual desktops that we provide to our remote viewer or remote investigators who are logging in to work with QIPCM. So we have a number of different applications provided. Coral Viewer is actually internal PACS for UHN, so that would only be available if you are a UHN employee. MIM is a very powerful 3D imaging platform for using for DICOM, and does a lot of work in terms of development of extensions and plugins. And I have a whole demo set for that for our third webinar. And just different features here. We have Slicer. Clear Canvas is a pretty straightforward DICOM viewer that I was just showing you on my desktop, as well as MATLAB and Office and things you might expect. And we're fully open to working with you. If there's other software that you don't see that you'd need as a trial, we can set that up pretty easily. So from an actual anonymization point of view, we have all of our trials listed out in our trial master files. So these are our trial master files. Oh, I meant to go back just a sec. So our trial master file here is part of our whole set of quality management system. So every one of our trials that we have at QIPCM is listed in this trial master file. So if you have some trials that you're working with, you might recognize your trials here. And basically we keep in here the trial protocol, all the QC lists, and current status in terms of recruitment and that. So it's all labeled in here. In this case, I've just created a demo one just for the purposes of this. So in our demo one, we are going to have what is basically a QC checklist. So in our QC checklist, this is going to tell me what to go and look at when I'm QCing this image. So we'll have a spreadsheet something along the lines of this. Oops, sorry. Actually, I'm going to maximize this, make this a little easier for everyone to see. So this is our QC spreadsheet. And I should point out, I did mention that I would have received an email as well. The same time as the site gets an email to say we've received it, I'll get an email internally, or someone in QIPCM who's responsible for these images, letting us know that the images are here and ready for QC. So normally it'll happen, like I say, 15 minutes after the actual email is sent. So at this point I wouldn't have received one yet, but obviously I know I sent them. So the images are sitting here, and this is our QC server. So it's got these anonymized images. So you can see the patient ID is now demo 11234, QIPCM demo. And it looks like, oh, that image says back, but that's not actually the case. This is the reason we don't need images like that, because this is an actual fused image that's just being generated automatically using the viewer here. And this allows us to see if the images are properly co-registered. In this case, it was a pretty light window, but we can see they're co-registered properly. So going back, how did I end up with two of this window? that's better. So going back to our phantom here, we'd now go in and we'd have to go through and check off the different things. So we can go through, and one of the things we'll need to look at is the DICOM headers to make sure there's no PHI lurking in there. So we can go through these DICOM headers. So this is all the information that's embedded in the DICOM if you're ever curious. Or when we talk about the metadata, this is the metadata we're talking about. I'm actually going to maximize this because it's very hard to see like this. Okay, there we go. So these are the actual values. So certain things like this. So the patient name is now QIPCM demo. The ID, demo 011234. And things like we can see what the clinical trial site ID was. So these are embedded, so we can look back and see where they came from. So that's the basic kind of checks we're doing for that. Where did this one maximize to? Okay, and so what are we looking for here? So we're going to say, okay, this is number 21. Scroll off. So this is now demo-01-1234. Study date is today. So whatever. Or no, sorry, study date's not today. Study date is the 19th. So 3/19, 2015. PHI check I just did. There's a CT here. Yeah. And there's an AC image, so that's here. There's no AC image, so we'd have to go back and check on that to see if the site required that or not. Slide spacing is consistent. We know it is because the image is fusing properly, and it won't actually fuse unless it is, so that's good. Is it in Becks per milliliter? This is something we encountered on one trial where they weren't actually in Becks per milliliter, so we can see yes, it is in fact in Becks per milliliter. Is the patient weight there? So actually it should be, actually it won't be because it's a phantom. So it's actually going to fail that one, so it's not going to have a patient weight. So we'd actually need to go back to the site and talk to them about that. So we'd have to follow up on this image set because of the fact that it had no patient weight, and we'd go back to the site and flag this one and get them to send it again. So that's pretty much all there is to that part of this. So we would save this and ignore that pretty much. And assuming it had passed QC, the next thing to do would be to send it on to our PACS. But because in this case it didn't pass QC, we would just delete it and ask the site to send us another one. So that's pretty much it for the anonymization and QC part of you. Are there any questions with regards to that? Just minimize this one. Let me just pull up this in case anyone's trying to type something in chat. Okay. So ultimately, that's most of what I had to talk about today in terms of the QC and what we're doing for that. I kind of blew through it very quickly like I do. So did anyone have any questions about this in general? Otherwise, then the only other things I wanted to point out were the other webinars that we'd like to present. Hopefully some of you found this useful and might want to learn more about these other features. So the second one is more about actually logging in remotely. So this would be how you do that, which I kind of showed you a bit today, but then looking through some of the applications that they can access. Webinar 3 is more to do with actual, like the more powerful tools. What can MIM do for you, and how does it create workflows? And then the fourth one is looking at our radiomic feature extraction tool. So this is where we can take big data and actually push those through and have their radiomic features extracted. So a lot of people are using this now for machine learning to try to diagnose early response to different treatments and the like. So those are what we have coming up in the pipe. Does anyone, once again, just another chance for questions, but otherwise I think that's pretty much all I had to cover. See someone's typing. Okay, Well, I'm gonna, as I said, I recorded this, so if you missed the beginning, I see we have quite a few more users on now than we did when we started. So I will post this. I think we'll probably post it on the QIPCM Techno website. I'll just check with Julie if that's the best place for it. Otherwise, thank you very much for your time, and hope this was useful. And maybe we'll see you for the future webinars 2, 3, and 4. Thanks.